First of all, good morning and welcome to this morning's news briefing on protecting LDS children. I'm your moderator, Jill Young. Thank you all for being here, most of all. The news outlets, today's speakers and organizers, survivors, and of course, 50 West Club and Cafe and technical staff for providing the location of today's event. I'll provide a few brief remarks and then outline how today's news conference will move forward. As you know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has long held a procedure in place of having bishops conduct worthiness interviews with children in their ward boundaries in order to decide whether they are doctrinally and morally worthy to be moved to the next level within the church's organization. In the majority of cases, these interviews are done in the bishop's office with the child and bishop alone, behind a closed door without a window or, at the least, frosted glass panel. Today's speakers will talk about these interviews, the damage that they can and have caused in the past, as well as what is being done by organizer Sam Young to help put a stop to them. My personal and brief statement is this. I happen to agree with Andrew Vax. He's a New York City attorney whose sole job it is to protect children from abuse. Vax says we are failing to protect our own species. Instead of the family unit evolving, we are devolving to the extent we are not protecting or preserving our own. We tolerate predators within a child's circle of trust. It's in schools, in clubs, and within religious organizations. Even a pack of wolves will expel non-protective parents as a way to preserve their species. Our human race remains the only one that tolerates same-species predators. Our society must stop growing its own victims. I'm going to say that again. Our society must stop growing its own victims, or our children will become our next endangered species, with our humanity being lost forever. Now back to business. While this organization's focus is about bringing change to current religious procedures, it is not claiming all LDS bishops are under suspicion of wrongdoing. The purpose is to focus on prevention of potential verbal and/or emotional abuse going forward. To shed light on the specifics is our first speaker, Sam Young. He is a concerned father, former LDS bishop, and petition organizer. Now, following Sam will be Joelle Casteix, who is a sex abuse victims advocate and Western Regional Director of SNAP, the Survivors Network. Last will be Natasha Helfer Parker, a certified sex therapist and licensed marriage and family therapist. Now, once all speakers have completed their remarks, they will all be available together here at the podium for questions by the media if you would like to proceed that way. We can also do one-on-one interviews if you prefer. We also have some survivors here today who have been victims in one form or another by the process. I will also be available to guide the media to them for one-on-one interviews if you choose to do it that way. So again, thank you for attending today's event, and we'll start off with Sam Young. Sam?
Last night I received this message. In 2014, I lost my 14-year-old son to suicide. His chat logs before his death hint he was struggling with feeling worthy. I have no doubts that these bishops' interviews played a role in my son's end-of-life decision. After 3.5 years of intense research and pondering of his decision, I placed these interviews as third on the list of why he made the decision. My haunting regrets tell me that he might still be alive if I had not required that he participate in these interviews. I don't know how a parent ever heals from this. This dad is watching the news conference as we speak at his home in Las Vegas. My dear friend at your home, I and 11,000 others apologize from the bottoms of our hearts that this happened to your son on our watch. I was complicit by not paying attention to the practices of my own church. I won't make that mistake again. These 11,000, which now includes this man, are committed to warning all Mormon parents to the horrid dangers of these interviews. When it comes to protecting our children, I have no tolerance whatsoever for political correctness. What I say next may offend every person I know. But I want to express the empathetic passion that I now feel after having read 1,000 stories of what we have done to our children. So here goes. We are killing our children. This child is not the first to have committed suicide. I know dozens of others who have attempted it, hundreds who have considered it. We are raping our children. 7-year-old Sandy on the bishop's desk. 12-year-old Amy, who joined us today, at the bishop's knees. Yeah, you can read their stories, but they are so hard to read. Courageous Sandy and brave Amy, thank you for making it safe for others to come forward. We are shaming our beautiful children into loathing themselves. We ruin their childhood. We torment their adulthood. I have read hundreds and hundreds of these heartbreaking stories. We are grooming our precious children to be unsuspecting targets of pedophiles among us. This has to stop, and we are not going to stop until it does. Okay, now for the update that I promised in the news release. First, on October 31st, 2017, we launched the petition, Protect the Children, Stop Sexually Explicit Interviews of Mormon Youth. Our goal was 10,000 signatures. That benchmark was reached on Christmas Eve. Over 5,000 signatories are from people here in Utah. Currently, there are 11,493 thundering voices calling for the immediate stop of one-on-one interviews and probing questions about masturbation and other sexually explicit matters. 2, the website ProtectLDSChildren.org has been created to provide an easily accessible location to share and read the stories of the damages that we are doing to our kids. 3, 173 stories have now been recorded on the site. 7 of them have been converted to video format. 4, some parents are waking up to the risk of their children and have asked for a letter that can be sent to their bishop. One is now available on the website under Set Boundaries. Click the button and up pops a simple template. 5, so what's our next step? We're announcing that right now. It's the March for the Children. On March 30th, 2018, 1,000 of us will gather at City Hall, then march 5 blocks to the church office building. There we will deliver our petition directly to the church. But our actions will not cease today, only to resume on March 30th. Nope, our children are too precious to just keep sending them behind closed doors. We are calling for this practice to stop immediately, today. How can we accomplish this? First, and this is the most important one, we call on the good parents of the church. Starting today, do not permit your child to be interviewed alone. Do not permit sexual questions to be asked of your child. A sample letter to set interview boundaries can be found on the website. Second, we call on the good bishops of the church to cease this practice immediately. Always invite a parent into every interview to be inside the room in support of their child. Going forward, never ask about masturbation or any other sexual probing questions. Do not shame our children. Protect our children from... My good friends that are bishops, I hope you listen to that applause. Do not shame our children. Protect our children from all harm. This will protect you too. Third, we call on the good leaders at the top of my church to give instructions to immediately stop this practice. Protect our children now. Not in 3 months, not in 3 years. Protect our children now. Of course, I recognize that the church may not act quickly. Parents, they are your children. You can act immediately for your children's sake. Finally, I believe the vast majority of bishops are good men. Most did not intend to harm our children. Until this past year, I did not understand exactly how we are traumatizing our kids. But now we know. We are informed. From this day forward, I will no longer give bishops a break for committing the blunders of the past. They are no longer intended errors of ignorance. The next time a bishop takes a child behind closed doors, the harm is intentional. The next time a bishop shames our children about masturbation, you have damaged children intentionally. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I love the teachings and example of Jesus, especially this one. Whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Today we call for the immediate cessation of offending our little ones.
Good morning. My name is Joelle Casteix, and I'm the author of The Well-Armored Child, A Parent's Guide to Preventing Sexual Abuse. I'm the Western Regional Leader of SNAP, the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. And I'm a survivor of sexual assault in the Catholic Church. Since 2003, I have devoted my career to helping survivors of sexual assault and rape in institutions. Adult survivors, survivors who were abused and assaulted as children, and those who were assaulted as adults. Last month, I received an email with an attachment to a news article that told me about a practice where Mormon bishops took children behind closed doors and interviewed them, asking them sexually explicit questions, including questions about masturbation and sexual purity. And I was appalled. There is no institution that I know of, no public school, no private school, no religious institution, not the Catholic Church, not the Episcopal Church, not the Lutheran Church, that allows this kind of practice. No sports team allows an adult and a child to go behind closed doors one-on-one, and especially to ask sexually explicit questions. In fact, this practice is considered a grooming behavior, a behavior that predators use to blur sexual boundaries, to normalize sexual behavior, and then to initiate sexual assault, to trick children into believing that sexual abuse is okay. Now, the bishops of the Mormon Church, 99.9% of them are good men. But that 0.001% who are not are taking advantage of that grooming behavior and are destroying children. This practice must stop. The First Amendment is one of the most powerful tools we have in the United States that protects us and protects our religious freedoms. But the First Amendment protects our ability to have religious beliefs. It does not protect behavior. It does not protect your right to take a child behind a closed door one-on-one and talk about sexually explicit things. It protects your right to believe in God any way you choose. It does not protect your right to isolate a child and traumatize them. It does not protect your right to provide a pathway to sexual abuse. We must always remember that the First Amendment does not protect this behavior. There are many other ways that the Mormon Church has to make sure that their children have wonderful formation and can grow into that their children can grow into strong men and women, that can grow into well-formed Mormons who grow into wonderful, wonderful human beings that have a great faith in God. But none of them should ever be forced behind a closed door. As a survivor of sexual abuse who was forced behind a closed door, no child should ever have to go through what I went through. I applaud every single survivor who was brave enough to post their stories on the website that Sam Young put up. Because for every brave survivor who was able to speak up and say what happened in their bishop interviews, another child will be saved. For every person who put their name on that petition, another child will be saved from an interview. We must empower our parents to stand up for their children and say, no, my child will not be forced into an interview behind a closed door with an adult who I do not know, an adult whose intentions may not be true. My child will stay protected with me. Today is the day that all of the children of LDS will remain safer. Today is the day, starting right now, that all of us will stand up to protect LDS youth. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Natasha Helfer Parker, and as a licensed marriage and family therapist and one of the few certified sex therapists working within the Mormon community, I have been making public statements about my concerns regarding worthiness interviews taking place between adult men and minor children and adolescents behind closed doors for years. When a religious institution decides that a certain aspect of normal sexual human behavior is a sin, such as masturbation or same-sex sexuality, it creates an artificial problem for its members to grapple with. And that's the position we are in as members of the church. And in the name of God, no less. Since God, or the interpretation of God, trumps all else for many, leaders who represent God's voice play a role in stripping self-autonomy and authority from developing youth raised within that system. This blunts sexual development and interferes with spiritual experiences. The practice of worthiness interviews and having sexual questions asked of minors, often with the result being a form of ecclesiastical discipline, violates 8 of the 16 sexual rights put forth by the World Association of Sexual Health, and has implications for 4 of the 6 sexual health principles that have been further developed from those rights. This happens at a pivotal time in sexual development. Even in the best of circumstances, where you have a loving bishop concerned with the welfare and spiritual development of a minor, the current structure and power dynamic of a worthiness interview, which is an inquiring or even interrogatory process looking to qualify worthiness, as if that's something that we can measure, is currently set up in a way where the bishop cannot help but cause emotional, psychological, and spiritual harm. He cannot help it. He cannot help but normalize and participate in grooming behaviors that violate the most basic of personal boundaries and the right to privacy. These interviews include probing questions about sexuality, anything from masturbation, viewing sexually explicit materials, sexual orientation, gender identity, and premarital sexual exploration are things teens and preteens can be asked about by men with no formal sexual training. Imagine an adult man using their ecclesiastical authority to, in essence, direct a minor child on matters such as where their own hand may or may not touch their own body. Where is the respect and honor for sexual autonomy and privacy in that? A minor in our community does not have the skill set, maturity, nor permission to balk at questions asked. And in the rare occasions where they might exert a healthy boundary, like refusing to answer a question or stating their discomfort, that type of behavior would commonly be interpreted as prideful, lacking humility, and reminiscent of a non-repentant attitude, furthering the potential for disciplinary action for exerting healthy boundaries. As an LDS mental health professional who has been working with thousands of Mormons for over 20 years, believe me when I tell you that I have heard the stories firsthand. Stories like the one Sam Young has been collecting on his website, the most heinous of which include a clear breach into sexual abuse and assault. But even when these criminal acts are not present, many more complications ensue from this practice in the context of sexual shaming. Sexual shaming, whether intentional or not, is a natural consequence of these worthiness interviews. Depression, anxiety, OCD, and scrupulosity, even to the point of self-abuse, which are common practices with many adolescents I see, where they are cutting themselves or causing other types of self-injury, suicidal ideation, and tragically completion due to guilt and shame of being deemed sexually unworthy. Sexual repression that follows into sexual relationships once one is trying to enjoy marital intimacy, leading to or exacerbating clinical issues such as anorgasmia, sexual desire disorders, erectile dysfunction, and premature ejaculation. Unwarranted guilt and shame over sexual fantasy and enjoyment can interfere with sexual desire and the sexual response cycle. Self-identity and esteem issues where it's difficult to conceptualize yourself as a sexual person at all, or at the other extreme, you've internalized that somehow you're over-sexualized and therefore feel abnormal or broken or have bought into the false notion that you're an addict. There needs to be a dramatic overhaul in how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints addresses sexuality so that its members can live safer, healthier, and more satisfying lives within this realm. Worthiness interviews that measure the worth of individuals due to arbitrary understandings by untrained leaders in different geographical locations who conduct these meetings need to stop and need to stop immediately. I was so pleased to hear yesterday of the suicide task force launched by the Utah governor to address the high rates of death by suicide by adolescents in this state, which, by the way, is growing 4 times faster than the rest of the country and is the leading cause of death in this age group in this state. I hope that the acknowledgement of sexual shame and cultures that promote it will be part of their discussions, especially since one of our own apostles, Elder Ronald A. Rasband, will sit on this panel. These changes that we are asking for require no doctrinal shifts. These would be changes of policy and tradition. And we have great precedents in Mormonism to scrutinize, challenge, and abandon traditions of our fathers that are not in our best spiritual interest. I am confident that we can do the right thing by our members and by our children and take care of this issue once and for all. In the meantime, I would encourage parents and guardians of minors to assert your parental authority, as Sam has suggested, and request that your children not be put in these types of situations. No more. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and your efforts on being here today. At this time, we'd like to invite all three to come up, or whatever the media would prefer as far as maybe one-on-one interviews. Would you like to do all three here at once, or one-on-one? Okay. Let's go ahead and we can just go ahead and start mingling, and that'll conclude. Thank you very much.